Good morning, everyone. Jake, do roll call, please.
Keisha Johnner,
Here.
Mark Ramey,
Here.
Steve McCombs,
Here.
Entertain a motion for today's agenda.
Motion to approve today's agenda.
Second.
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Item number 3 is communications. This is the public comments portion. These are portions of the agenda during which we hear from the public that are not on the agenda below. These could possibly become further topics. Does anybody have any public comments? Seeing none. Entertain a motion for today's consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
On to business. Item number 1 is the Marion County Special Event Application, Thrive Knoxville Living Windows.
Full disclaimer, I am not on the Living Windows Committee, but I'm the appointed rep here today for Thrive. So are there any questions? Be similar to last year, City of Knoxville will be erecting the artificial tree on the south side of the courthouse lawn. I think my email said November 6th. That was not included in here. It did mention decorating prior to the event. So I think November 6th is when they're going to at least start the erection of that artificial tree. And then Kurt Schwanebeck and volunteers do the other lighting and decorating around the courthouse grounds prior to the event that is being applied for here.
I do see it says Courthouse Rotunda.
Yep. So in the past, they have held a wreath auction. They are not sure what exactly is going to be in there at this time. There are a couple different options of what could be in the rotunda. In the past, Lisa or Craig Egan, others have volunteered to be the county staff. If that doesn't happen, or if there's no volunteers for that, we'd be open to, whatever, if it was necessary to pay for staff time or whatever.
That's just for one evening on the 16th.
That would be just for the date of the event of Living Windows, yes, on the 16th.
Lately, it's been, the last couple of years, it's been Chris has a staff member in the rotunda on that evening.
And I don't know how that's been handled in the past, if Thrive pays for that staff time or not.
I'd have to look back. I think we just covered that event.
And I think it does state in there that they had requested restrooms be open in the courthouse at the same time as the rotunda.
Okay. I know Chris is on his way. He's just running a little bit behind, but yeah, I haven't heard anything. I don't have any issues as long as facilities doesn't have any issues.
I'll make a motion to approve the special event application.
Second.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Ramey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2 is a special class C retail native wine license application, Thunder Creek Winery. Jake.
I doubt Ron's here or online. Just a renewal for his annual. He has a vineyard there on his property.
Yeah.
Sheriff, do you have any?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
McCombs.
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. Number 3 is resolution 2023-60, fixing date and public hearing for the proposed would be the Adkins specialized agreements. So
Jake, you want to talk about this or you want me to talk about it?
I do not.
Michael is online. All right, good. And I know Joe's here as well. But anyway, we're finally to the place with this project from a county standpoint where we can start running our calendar as far as approval of agreements and going through the process of discussing bond issuance dates and those types of things. So today is just really merely fixing a date for the public hearing on the development agreement that's attached in your packets. time for review. Jared has a copy of it as well and is reviewing. So that's really all today is for. It's just to affix that date. Michael, from a timeline standpoint, next meeting, are we looking at in terms of keeping on track with bond issuance and funding?
Yeah, we're actually gonna have the next meeting be solely focused on the hearing for this development agreement and then approval of said development agreement. We've got everything in the bonding working behind the scenes on that. I believe we sent out draft documentation to the working group a couple days ago. We'll pick up at the second October meeting with approval of a refresh of the offering document so we can market the bonds to sell those in early November and close in early December. We need to pass December 1st to kind of optimize debt repayment. And we visited with your attorneys at Allers to make that plan. Should be a very comfortable timeline in terms of both action for the working group as well as meeting the requirements of the development agreement subject to the board's approval at the following meeting.
And Michael, from a bonding standpoint, given there's been a little bit of a time lag here from when the board originally approved support for the project, nothing has materially changed in terms of the total offering and the structure of the bonds, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Two factors. One, I think we're all aware that interest rates have increased, but we took a particularly conservative bend on preliminary numbers. So despite interest rates increasing over the last year and a half or so, I believe I ran those point numbers for you a week or two ago, and we're actually below what those estimates were. So that's good from that standpoint. The second piece is, while the time's been delayed, issuance has been delayed, along with kind of the timing for these improvements to hit the valuation rolls. So the alignment might be in a different year from what we maybe talked about a year or so ago, but the actual kind of 20-year thought process here is unchanged from really our preliminary projections.
And then when we get to the place of reviewing the agreement, having the public hearing, talking about bonds, we'll go into detail again on that timeline and the funding aspects of this. But again, today's just the public hearing portion. Joe, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add. Okay. That's about it. Just to establish the date for the next meeting.
No further discussion. And
All
a
right.
motion for resolution 2023-60.
I will move to approve.
Second.
Ramey.
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
On to item number 4, which is discussion action of the Marion County property, which is 104 South 6th Street, Knoxville. Before us today, we have 3 items of discussion for the board. One would be DHS, which is the Targeted Case Management, has reached out and they're currently housed there. They need an extension for 30 days. Second would be the DH side. We have housed under code at 6th Street. They are moving. They're to here at 3014 East Main. Their targeted date is by the end of September. Number 3 is how the board would like to proceed on the disbursement of 6th Street, if that's how we choose to. So anyways, I'd like the board to, for Jake's purposes, if we are in agreement for a 30-day extension for DHS. We had county attorney review this. He saw no objections in regarding the lease or the agreement. Or do you have any questions or concerns?
No, I have no problem with extending the lease for a month to give them some time.
That's fine with me.
So Jake, do you need us to do it all together at once if we're, because I think we have some different items when we're talking about 6th Street, so.
However you want to do that, whatever
Okay.
actions you guys feel.
Yeah,
We can
yeah.
make it go either way.
So-
Since it's an official agreement, you probably should have
Okay.
a separate.
Yeah,
This would be the one that Barbara Venden forwarded down this week.
correct. Yep. So yeah, could I have a motion on,
Motion to approve the First Amendment to the lease agreement.
Second.
Johnner.
aye.
McCombs.
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
That brings us to the portion in regarding Sixth Street itself. I know in the past, I believe we had made a agreement as a board. I believe there was a motion made that we were looking at disbursement. Is that correct, Jake?
I believe that you guys have talked about that over the
Yeah,
last several years, getting rid of that property.
So
Correct.
in your packet, we did have an appraisal done last year that I still feel that is, you know, a very valid appraisal, unless the board feels differently. And then when speaking with the county attorney's office, it was my understanding, depending upon how we want to do this, and that's something we can further discuss, but we have in the past, we publish at least twice if we were to do the bid process. So we wants to announce the process, whether it's sealed bids or by other means, and then the second would be a public hearing in case of the sealed bids, or however we were choosing to do so, and if it met the threshold. So I like the bid process. I do think for the taxpayers themselves, it's my understanding there possibly could be somebody, maybe two different people interested in the building. But when the time comes, you never know. At least gives everybody an ample chance, but I want to hear the board's thoughts on that too.
No, I'm fine with the bid process. It'd be something similar we did with the county home property.
Same thing.
Yeah.
The only thing we did, I mean, we set a floor
Yeah,
as a
we-
board on that one.
Right.
So the question would be, do you want the appraisal to be the floor? Do you want some other price to be the floor? Do you want a floor at all? Or are you just willing to accept the bids? And then we do not have to accept those bids at all. We can go back and do it again if we don't find something satisfactory.
Just as a point of reference, I believe that the board in 2012 did this process and did a sealed bid process with a floor, and the floor wasn't met. And so the board didn't take any action on any of those, and
Correct.
still maintained the property. At
Correct.
least that's what was 2012.
So we do, but we do not have to establish a floor though, Jake. Jared,
I don't believe so.
to do a sealed bid, let's say we get some offers, let's say we don't set a floor and one of the offers is $10 and the other offer is $15. We don't have to accept those even if we don't establish a floor price that we're looking for. Do we, or don't we?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I would have to see how it's drafted. But no, I mean, I think it might be better to keep that one price.
Okay.
If I can have a chance to just ask him, because I know he's been working on this. I haven't
Right,
looked at this, so.
What's the appraisal price?
$165,000.
What is it, Steve?
$165,000. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
Are you fine with that? I'm
Yeah.
fine with that
Yeah.
too. I mean,
Yeah,
if
setting the
if we're
floor.
comfortable that the appraisal is still sound
Yeah,
and valid, and I believe it is, I
Mhm.
think just set that as the floor.
I agree with that. So we'll need a motion to, if we're going to approve the way doing sealed bids, we would do,
So,
yeah.
but so let's break it in. So let's establish the floor price.
It's a good idea.
So I'll make a motion to establish the floor price for this property at the appraisal price listed $165,000.
Second.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey,
Aye.
And then we're going to do, we need a motion for proceeding with doing sealed bids.
Yeah, I'll make that motion to proceed with a sealed bid process for this property.
Second.
Johnner,
Aye.
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
I would like to state that as the building is going to be 30 days extension, I have spoke with DHS on that, the case management side, and I told them that if by chance there was possible happen to be showing, so that Chris has an understanding that they were in agreement to that. So just so the board and everybody is fully aware, so. Other than that, that's it. On to item number 5, which would be the road department update. Tyler.
So I'd like to start out by expressing my gratitude for my staff and their quick and appropriate action, given the events that took place a week ago, and subsequently the responsiveness of the Marion County Sheriff's Office, Attorney's Office, and Knoxville PD, and anyone else that was involved in that incident. So their actions were all in the effort of our department's safety, and we appreciate that and how that was handled. So yeah, it's been a while since I've done, an update on our operational side. So I wanted to kind of give an update. It's been another really dry year for Marion County, going on 3.5 years of significantly dry weather, which is definitely problematic. It does allow us to get a lot done, but it also really wears on the guys. There's really no stopping, just, endless work really. Which is a good thing and a bad thing. Equipment maintenance maybe lacks a little bit when there's just dry weather and you can keep plugging along every day, day in and day out. But so we have to prioritize equipment intentionally to do some maintenance. But as far as operationally, we're currently over 50% of our fall maintenance rock hauled. It's been extremely difficult to get that rock tied down. So if you may have seen, we've been working late on days where we do get rain. An inch rain does not last very long. So we're working long hours when we do have moisture to try to get that rock tied down. We make significant, millions of dollars of investment in this rock. We want it to be tied down before winter and worked into the road surface. So there could be weekends where we work this fall if the time is right. We've got a lot of large windrows of rock out there. We really need to get that worked in if we can. This is the 3rd year. So, along with the dry years, we've had 3 years of a new rock gradation and specification. I believe I originally presented to you in 2019. That went out, I think, January of 2020 to the suppliers. I do see some benefit there to date, even with the lack of moisture. I think it is paying off for us. I know the motor grader operators, took some of them a little bit of time to get used to the new gradation, but I believe it is doing what it was intended to do. We have budgeted 5.5 miles of road regrade this year. We typically budget 7 or 8. That number was dialed back in this current fiscal year because of rock prices and inflation. We cut about 7% of our total tonnage for all types of rock, and regrade rock was one of those areas where we cut. We still have a huge need for this, but we just weren't able to accommodate it in our budget. Hopefully we can in the future years. So of the 5.5 miles budgeted, 3.5 are complete. We're still dealing with some right-of-way issues on the other road segments. I highly doubt we get those accomplished this fall, maybe late spring. So they may not be done in this fiscal year. We also did something we've never done. We've budgeted this for a few years, just never had the timing, equipment, all of the pieces really didn't fall into place in prior fiscal years, which was gravel road stabilization. I will say I'll preface that by saying we've done a few test sections in the past, maybe 1,000 foot here or there. So we are using a proprietary product. I've done extensive firsthand research. Mike and I have visited a number of other counties that have implemented this. They've done 25 to 30 miles at the time we visited them, which was in 2019. So they continue to incorporate this proprietary product. This specific product is proven very beneficial in those counties, even through wet springs. 2019, when we visited, was a very wet spring and they're performing very well. So finally, we're able to implement that. We did 3.8 miles this year. These were both roads that we had intentionally picked. They were roads that were regraded, culverts have been evaluated. There was good drainage and ditches from the regrade. So we were very intentional about that. And also the traffic volume or the soil type was problematic on those particular roads. So we got the most bang for our buck. Going forward, we would like to use them on higher volume roads than the roads that we did do. My concern with doing, our highest volume gravel road initially was if it didn't work in Marion County for some reason, I didn't want it to fail on a road with 500 vehicles a day. I'd rather it be on 250. So, because our soil types vary from Washington County and Clark County and Decatur County and all the other ones that we had visited. So, so far to date it is performing very well. Residents seem to be very happy. We did it on a high volume truck route with very few homes. And we did it on a high volume route with few trucks, but lots of residential and commuter traffic. So we kind of have the both ends of the spectrum. I did things slightly different in each scenario. Moving forward, I would love to do more of this. The problem comes in the method of incorporation. We rented a machine from Clark County and we rented a couple pieces of equipment from them actually. That option may not be there in the future. So how do we adequately incorporate the product moving forward? If we want to do more, maybe become a challenge.
Hey, Tyler.
Yep.
Can you, Steve probably knows, but for Mark and I, since, when you're doing this, when you're on the road stabilization, how much does that typically save, hopefully for the future? Do you have any idea, like whether it's
Well,
maintaining it and?
yeah, so the savings, there's a payoff period. There's a lot of upfront costs, about 52,000 a mile, which is still significantly cheaper than seal coating or paving. Seal coating would be 50,000 a mile initially, but you're coming back after in a 3-year rotation to maintain that seal coat. Paving, you're close to $1 million or $1.5 million a mile for paving. So at 52,000 a mile, the counties in Minnesota, I have not visited these roads, but Minnesota was one of the first states to do it without putting a pavement over the top of the stabilized material and using it as a granular surface. And they've had theirs for 10 plus years. Some of their original ones were put in 2008. So our payoff period on a high volume road, highest of our gravel road volumes, would be about 7 years. The roads that we did this past year would be 10 years payoff. So there's some upfront costs, takes a lot of rock, but the benefit of that is we are not blading those roads weekly or every other week. We're blading them 3 times a year and we're not rocking them in that 10-year period. But
So is it fair to say, Tyler, it's not so much savings, you're just reducing expense.
yeah,
So
there may be savings
gonna,
eventually.
you're gonna front load it with the stabilization
Correct.
and in the hopes of reducing your maintenance cost.
And with hopes of reducing maintenance cost. Ultimately, there could be some savings, because the material, the payoff of that initial outlay is we broke even and now it's just pure savings, at 10, 11 years on the roads we just did. But there's also increased cost in the material that we're putting out
Right.
there year after year as well.
Right.
So, and then the roads that we're looking at, not only are we looking at simply the highest volume roads, but at the extents of the blade route. So
Right.
when the guy leaves the shop, if he's got a high volume road on the opposite end of his route, furthest from the shop, that makes a lot of sense because he doesn't have to go there every week
Sure,
at the far
Sure.
extent of his route.
sure.
So,
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because when I think of savings, I'm thinking of things going to our revenue side. This is just reducing the overall outlay for road maintenance,
correct,
potentially.
and there's an
Because if your
unquantifiable,
cost for materials go up significantly, that could offset any savings you have on the front end.
Right.
Right? Okay.
Mhm. And there's also kind of an unquantifiable savings there as well, is if the road is performing as it is intended, we don't have to spot in any rock in a wet year place additional material, which takes a lot of time and effort. Cause
Right.
it's not as part of our routine maintenance rock program. We're intentionally going to that road to do this muddy spot, and then we send a motor grader there.
Yeah, it's
And-
inefficient.
Yeah, that's super inefficient.
Yeah, it.
So, and that's not really quantifiable because we haven't had to do much of that in 3 years.
Sure,
Honestly,
sure.
so,
Sure.
but we do track that rock, so we know which roads we do a lot of that on, a lot of spot rock and repair rock, so we take that into consideration when we're looking at which roads to do also, and that was one of the ones we did this year. Every spring we're there.
Mhm.
So we're trying to eliminate that, all that extra rock hauling. So. Yeah, if you have more questions about that, or want to go look at them someday with me, I'd be happy to take you guys out there and show you what those roads look like. I think the residents are pleased. The area residents already want it on their road. You know, that if they don't live on that road but travel it and have seen it, they already want it. So. In Clark County, you know, their operator came up to run their piece of equipment for us. And he's like, you're gonna have residents knocking on your door wanting this as soon as it's done. So we are very pleased, to date. Bridges and structures, as you know, the T-15 Flagler Bridge project came in about $1 million under the engineer's estimate. We have not established a pre-construction meeting date. The contractor initially says they would like to start demolition sometime this winter, but they have a lot of upfront work to do. They're trying to figure out material lead times. They're working with the railroad on, they have to get all their staff trained and certified to be in the railroad right away. And so there's a lot of upfront legwork there, and we haven't received any formal indication of when that will happen.
So Tyler, any rationale as to why the estimate was $1 million over? Was it just inflated, just worried about inflated costs?
Yeah,
or-
and I, our consultant had recent experience within the past few months of significantly higher material
So
prices.
just thinking it's gonna keep going up. Okay.
Yeah, I think in May or June, they had a letting, and ours was August, that one was significantly higher in like square foot costs or
Mhm.
of bridge deck or
Okay.
concrete and that sort of thing. So yeah, that had been the trend. I mean, and asphalt was completely opposite in our last letting in July. It was the other direction.
Right.
So.
Right. Okay.
um,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it was just a conservative estimate, but it very easily could have went the other way.
Well, I think
So-
one of the things to highlight on anything like this related, especially to what you do, is just the volatility you're dealing with. I mean, oil prices are now, they've come down a little bit today, but they're pushing $95 a barrel. They're gonna probably go over 100. That's gonna drive costs up, but a change in something could materially alter that quickly.
Right.
And that's what you've been seeing is volatility.
And depending on what type of construction it is, they don't mess with the volatility. They just err on the side of caution.
They just go up, they just go
Yeah,
high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For earthwork, is a good example of that.
Yeah.
On Vermont Drive down by Marysville, we were doing a major rehab on a bridge. The bridge deck was poured yesterday. That should be opened either Friday or Monday. If we get here or there. Our crews did a replacement of a large box culvert. This was on a road regrade project. The box culvert had been inspected 6 or 7 years ago, and then when we got there today or this year, it was significantly deteriorated from that point. So we went ahead and just replaced it with a railroad tank car, which we've done a number of bridge and box culvert replacements with railroad tankers. We custom ordered this one to 70 feet, which improved the side slope, allowed us to obtain a full clear zone for this type of road. So not only did we improve the safety, but we improved the drainage capacity and a structure and replaced it with a structure that'll last decades, if not a century or more. All paved road bridges, so have been evaluated for the all systems overweight permit. So as part of some new legislation that's come about over the last couple of years, counties were required initially to review all paved farm to market routes. I went ahead and just had them do all paved route bridges. Technically, we don't have to have that done until July 1 of 2025. But we had a little extra money left over in last fiscal year in our bridge inspection contract. So I went ahead and had them do that. The next thing we'll be evaluating is our farm to market route bridges. And then ultimately all remaining local road bridges. So these bridges had never been evaluated for loads of this capacity. So this is 12% over on any 5, 6, or 7 axle vehicle for indivisible and divisible loads. So that is a big change from previous legislation, that it's indivisible and divisible loads. And I can talk more about this later with you, but there were some big changes, kind of caught counties off guard. It was snuck in there a couple years ago. Then there were some modifications to the bill last year that basically there's some open-ended language in there saying they can take the shortest route to any allowed route or unrestricted route. How people are going, how motor vehicles are going to enforce that, I have no idea, but we're already seeing it. There's truck drivers wanting it, wanting the permit, asking us why we don't have routes on there. Well, for one, we need to evaluate our bridges. Also, the research is showing us that it's more detrimental to the pavements actually than the bridges. That's going to be the bigger impact, because that puts a significantly higher axle load on every panel of concrete or every point load on an asphalt road, where the bridges, it's not as significant because there's some redundancies and contingency built into bridges and structures anyway. So that's going to become a challenge in the future. I know we will see damage to gravel roads and ultimately paved roads. Whether it's visible in the first couple of years, I don't know. But a lot of haulers are just getting the permit because a $500 permit is cheaper than getting a ticket. So if they're 1 pound over 80,000 and they have a permit, they're good to go. And right now, I don't know how they could argue that all routes aren't covered because of the way the wording is in the most recent legislation.
Is that something that you guys are working on?
Yeah.
Okay.
The County Engineers Association is actively working on that. To anyone who will listen, which is no one.
Okay. Is that something that you need to be, speaking with Kelly on to see if she
Yeah,
can?
yeah. Her and I
lobbyist,
have been
okay.
in touch about it over the past year, off and on. Last year it was after the revised legislation had already been passed. But yeah, I don't know where it goes from here. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter right now because the governor's harvest proclamation exceeds that anyway.
Right.
So
Initially, when this all systems permit came into being years ago, we were against it. We didn't opt into it because we wanted to control the traffic.
Yeah.
On our roads, but now we don't have a choice.
now we're forced to opt in. We're going to be forced by 2025 to opt in.
So again, I'm trying to think about this from a macro standpoint instead of the technical side.
Mhm.
So heavier loads and the drive toward allowing truck drivers to have heavier loads on a more permanent basis. Is that
On
what I'm
everything but the
understanding?
interstates. Yep.
Yep. And you're doing this road stabilization project, but it's going to have heavier loads on the road on that. So any benefits will be potentially eroded faster because we'll have heavier loads on the roads.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And really pavements, secondary
So we
road
can't keep
pavements
up with
weren't designed for the loads
whatever
we
the
see
governor
now.
and whatever the state's going to do. The state's going to mandate certain things,
Right.
and our cost of maintaining is going to essentially be driven by what that.
Correct.
Okay.
Now,
Got
full
it.
disclosure, we do get money from that permit. 75% of every dollar collected goes to the counties and then is distributed through a formula. We have how does that work? Through the road use tax formula. So every county gets a share of that. But it's earmarked for bridges, for bridge repair and replacement and inspections. Well, I already, just in my paved road bridges, I've got an additional $4,500 in inspections to re-rate these bridges for these loads. Now, that's a one-time thing for now until legislation changes something and we have to look at it again.
Right.
But we know right now that the detriment is more likely to be at the pavement than on the bridges.
Right.
So.
Got
And
it.
gravel roads and everything else, so.
Okay.
Are working with, we have a number of roads and bridges that are FM extensions through Pleasantville, where it says that the cities and the counties have to work together. I reached out to Pleasantville, Melcher, Dallas. Any FM extension in cities less than 500, we already have jurisdiction on. I've given those small towns just a heads up that eventually we'll be looking at heavier loads coming through your towns as well. We'll evaluate that with the populations greater than 500. Also, we have some jurisdictional bridges that are not ours. So the Army Corps of Engineers Bridge over Lake Red Rock is not Marion County's bridge. They are not going, I talked to them last week, they are not going to allow that. They're going to have a restriction. We have a couple roads, T15 Flagler Bridge, which is ultimately going to be replaced, is not capable of those additional loads. So it'll be restricted until it's replaced. And then the Skunk River Bridge on T22 or the Sully Road is our other paved road bridge that we currently know will not handle those loads. So those are our two restrictions. Then we also have the old Highway 92 bridge. Old 92 is our road, but the DOT maintains that bridge. And I'm waiting for the formal response from them onto whether that road segment would then be restricted or unrestricted based on that bridge's capacity. So lots to do there. And we have farmers calling about every week, farmers, contractors, wanting to know what roads and why we haven't allowed certain roads and whatnot. The other challenging part about that, and then I'll get off my soapbox about this, is the permittee has to go online to review a digital GIS map to know which roads in the counties are allowed. When like to Steve's point, we didn't opt in because they came to us to get a permit and here are the roads and routes you can drive on. Like it was on their permit in their truck. That's not the case any longer. All systems, some drivers think that's all systems. Now, legally, they have to go online and review the map. Will they? Common sense says no.
More benefits of your state government.
So it's extremely frustrating and challenging. It's taken up way too much of my time and we've really gotten nowhere at this point, other than review some bridges. Okay, T15 Flagler Bridge. Again, we have a lot of project coordination coming up and I'll talk about in a minute. So upcoming projects, T15 Flagler Bridge, we have a traffic safety improvement program on G76, what we call the Gosport Hill. This would be for the curves only. We've been a lot of questions about what section of G76 we're widening. Only the curves from about a mile west of Highway 14 to just west of the English Creek. So the grant was for the curved segment of this road. We also received a similar grant on T15 at Chrisman Corner. This is not a widening, but it is a shoulder paving. We already have the width. We're just going to simply pave the shoulders and add edge line rumbles. G28 pavement rehabilitation project. We got the Miller Meeks grant. That project was delayed due to the influx of federal review of projects at the state and federal highway level. So our letting was intended to be in January. It's been delayed to February because it didn't get through the environmental review for an overlay project. Simply an overlay project. And then subsequently,
I'm thinking the exact same thing, Steve.
and then subsequently, when that overlay is complete, we received a state grant for, actually it was a federal grant swapped with state funds to replace all the guardrail on the bike trail, which we talked about at the last meeting. So as far as project coordination, I actually have one to add to the list. I talked to the railroad this morning. So we have 7 projects in Marion County in calendar year 2024 in a very close proximity and on some major corridors, affecting major corridors. So T15 Flagler Bridge will close T15 for several months. Traffic will be detoured Old 92 to T17. Old 92 bridge that I spoke of earlier is the DOT's, and they will be doing a bridge deck overlay, at which point the detour will then become new Highway 92 in 2024. New Highway 92 is having a pavement rehabilitation project from Tracy to the bypass outside of Knoxville, including reconstruction of the T17 Highway 92 intersection, adding turn lanes, widening radiuses and whatnot. Highway 14, just south of G28, I'm still confirming the exact timing of this one, but twice they've told me it's 2024. The bridge just south of G28 will be closed for replacement over a tributary coming into Lake Red Rock. The detour for that will be at 163 to T17. Highway 163, which is the detour route for 14, will have shoulder paving for both lanes, both sides between Otley and Pella in 2024. Our G28 project, which will ultimately see Highway 14 traffic, the detour won't pick up everyone. So our project, which is about a month and a half for the overlay and another few weeks for the guardrail, will be one lane, but it will ultimately see more traffic, I'm sure. T15 Red Rock Dam. So I had a conversation last week with the Corps of Engineers. The long-term closures will be ending soon, as far as we know. The short-term intermittent closures of 24 to 48 hours will be through 2025 now. Originally, I was told June of 2024. Their gate rehabilitation project will be ongoing until 2025 now. They're doing work on both the large Tainer gates and the sluice gates. At which point for both projects, they have to have a crane large enough to lift equipment out of the dam or over the dam into the lake. And the crane takes up the entire width of the road. So that's the reason it can't be one lane.
Sounds
So-
like your department is going to be very popular again in the next couple of years.
And then the railroad called me this morning and wants to close T17 to replace the railroad crossing. And I said, no, we have too much going on in the next 18 months. It just can't happen. He's like, well, how about next week? I'm like, I can't, we don't have enough notice to close it Monday. It's just, so yeah, I think what I kept repeating there was T17. It is open for now, but it's going to have a lot of traffic. The department's gonna have their hands full over there. Some of this work may be in the winter. So we don't know exactly when or what. So it's going to be extremely challenging to get around in Marion County. We will try to, I've already been stating. I've worked with the radio station. And we've got some of that information out. We're trying to get notifications out as early as possible. I'm here telling you in a public meeting, again, you've heard about all these projects in the past. It's going to be very difficult to get around in Marion County next year. We are having a meeting probably after the first of the year with the DOT, with the Corps of Engineers for project coordination. What that means is really just laying out the schedules. There may be a possibility of delaying some projects that aren't already in the works, but most of our Marion County projects, we got final plans submitted. We're just waiting for the letting date. And really it's out of our hands unless we delay things an entire year, which we really don't want to do. Then we risk losing funding if projects aren't complete, because we, like on our Miller Meeks grant, we need to get that done by a certain date in 2025. Then we risk that and that sort of thing. So unfortunately, these are the cards that are being dealt. So we will work with the DOT, the Corps, the Sheriff's Office. We may look at purchasing or renting some PDMS boards. Sometimes the DOT has some available for use, just to help communicate to the road users in a little different way than we've ever done before. With all that going on, we still have much more that our office is working on. Junction 92 is just, since June, you guys authorized funding to fully fund the project through a variety of funding sources, which we're extremely appreciative of. But it has been just an enormous amount of work since then to get the project to the bid letting, which we're not quite there yet. Final site grading prior to buildings is underway right now. Next week we'll start utility installations. You know, external utilities are also working their way to the site, Mid-American, Rural Water, Lisco, getting fiber there. So we had to get Andrew Myers up to speed on what's happening with Lisco. So everything is starting to come together and we have a tentative schedule now for bid letting. So on October 10th, I plan to come to you with plans and specifications for approval by this board. On October 31st, we would have a pre-bid meeting for contractors just to answer any questions. November 14th, we would bid the project. Not sure how, Jake and I have discussed this. If it would be immediately before the board meeting or if we actually read the bids aloud in the meeting, is still yet to be determined. I guess if you have thoughts on that, you feel free to let me know. Then November 28th, public hearing and award of contract at your board meeting. November 15th or December 30 of 2024 is our tentative completion dates, substantial and final completion dates, with winter 24-25 move-in date. If I don't get some things done today, this all gets bumped 2 weeks. So, which is not the end of the world. This is a fairly large project. We want the bidders to have the plans 4 to 5 weeks. So we're just going to have to bump everything by 2-week increments if we aren't meeting some of these deadlines. Following that, main shop. So that was the main shop. Cold storage, bid documents are being prepared for that. This is a much smaller, simpler structure. We're bidding at separately. Bid documents are prepared. Tammy did that for us. So we're finalizing that and we'll go out to bid separately. Salt sheds will be procured through the state bid at a later date. Engineer's office, just started thinking about that yesterday. It's not designed. So likely we will design that this winter. I was looking at maybe a spring, summer bid letting. And that would be a spring 2025 move-in date. So late 2024, early 2025 construction. And then in 2025, we would vacate or sell all and move out of and sell all consolidated facilities. And I say consolidated because we are not getting rid of all of our locations and consolidating. Get questions about that quite frequently. We are not getting rid of all of our locations. So safety. We have the projects I already talked about. The safety grants, we're constantly looking at ways to improve safety. So I wanted to give you a couple of metrics on the projects that we've done in the past. So G28, T14, we did paved shoulders and or widenings. And on those routes, we have seen 13.5% reduction in a run off the road right crash. So running off the road to the ditch side, we've seen a 13.5% reduction. However, at the same time, the way police reports work, we're seeing an increased number of distracted driving cited as the major cause. So is it really better? I don't know. Because distracted driving, runoff, it just depends how it's coded. But one thing we do know, distracted driving on the rise. So it can't hurt to have paved shoulders and rumble. We did see on G28, for whatever reason, a 20% reduction in cross the center line crashes. My thought, maybe we don't have that 11-foot lane with an edge drop off, people overcorrecting. Now they have that shoulder there, so we don't have that overcorrecting and folks crossing the center line, and we have almost no run off the road left crashes. We do not have center line rumbles, by the way. So intersection improvements, we got a grant to do flashing beacons. Cumulatively, we've seen a 12.5% reduction in failure to yield or run stop sign crashes. So the flashing beacons seem to be working. And let me just state, there are very, very few safety measures where you're going to see much more than 10 to 15% reduction. There's the occasional 30% crash modification factor, they call it. That's very rare. Today, we are debriefing with law enforcement on last week's incident with the police department and sheriff's office. There may be multiple future trainings or multiple future trainings or things that come of that. As far as employee safety. Last thing here, budgets. So I'm already looking at next budget, even though we're just a few months into the current budget. We've seen a 14.8% increase in revenue over the last 4 years. So in 4 years' time, so dating back to 2019, we've at our department have seen a $972,000 increase in revenue to our department. Roadstone alone has increased 46% in that same time frame.
What's that?
Roadstone, rock.
Got it.
Which totals $736,000 just to Roadstone. Which is about it's close to, not a third, about 25% of our expenses in Roadstone each year, which is a big number. But again, not 100% of our expense line, but nearly 25% of it covered all new revenue. So that's a challenge that we'll be working through. We did receive a little more road use tax than I anticipated. The final dump at the end of June was much more than anticipated. So we had some projects that didn't get completed like always. So we ended with a fairly healthy fund balance at the end of FY 23, a little bit higher than I had budgeted for, obviously. So we'll be taking that forward and putting it right back into projects because that's where our big cut was last year. We still have a limited budget for projects. We have some projects we're working on with Jasper County. Funding those is the priority because that just takes coordination and time to do, and we don't always get those opportunities. So we're going to take advantage of that while we have it. That's the first priority for projects. Those are bridges. Equipment, we cut the budget in half on equipment last year. We're likely looking at that again. So I look back at that 2019 budget and I project out equipment replacement for 15 years for all equipment from pickups and skid loaders to motor graders and dump trucks. At that time, over that 15-year period, we were averaging just over $600,000 per year was the need we needed to adequately maintain our fleet. That's over $1 million right now, 4 years later. I budgeted 400 and some last year. And we're probably looking at something similar. So we're being like last year, we ended up buying 3 used machines instead of replacing 2 new. We're going to look for any opportunity we have to do that. Problem with that is then your parts and repair budget goes up at the same time. So if we're not replacing equipment really when it should be. And we've seen reductions or stagnant growth in our equipment repair budget because we've replaced motor graders and kept them under warranty and whatnot. But that may have to change. In the future, we're going to have to budget more for bridge inspections and ratings. There's other new laws on the horizon that aren't in place. There's also some mandates coming out by the state, which ultimately will be a good thing, but it takes our staff and our consultant time to be in compliance with those things. Basically, it's a statewide bridge rating software. So then each consultant isn't doing a one-off. Some counties do their own. It's a one-stop shop, which ultimately will be a good thing and ultimately will save us time, but there's some upfront costs for everyone involved. And initial estimates from a conservative estimate from our consultant is 60,000, and we would phase that in probably over 4 or 5 years. And he said that's likely on the high side. Kind of along the lines of budget, we are still operating with 2 fewer full-time employees than our departmental structure is set up for. One of them is a supervisory position. Actually, today we're operating with 3 fewer. Monday, we have a new employee starting as a full-time employee. Crews are expected to do more. I mean, that's been communicated to them. You know, we're operating this way because of the budget constraints that I see and foresee in the future. We still want our investments to be in our roads. I think there's a way we could restructure in the future, possibly, nothing solidified here, that we can operate as efficiently as possible and still maintain the level of service that we provide today. So expectations, we're trying to this was started in 2020, 2020 threw a wrench in some things, but being super intentional about communicating our expectations with employees has been a goal of mine. I am not where I want the department to be, or it is not where it should be. So getting some of these projects off our plate and getting back to communicating the expectations for our employees will help us be efficient and do more with less moving forward. Any potential future changes in our departmental structure will come after the relocation to Junction 92. We're going to make no formal changes. Everything we're operating under right now is informal, trial basis. Can we do this? Will that work? So no formal changes to our department structure have been solidified at this point, and nor have they been communicated with the department. With all that said, at some point, I would like to revisit the employee incentive program with you. We made some, we're operating at significantly less than what is budgeted for my wage budget because we're at reduced staff. That's looking at revenues and how do we handle future budgets. We did receive raises to equalize. What I presented was an equalization to where, like, our employees should have been a few years ago with like employees in similar counties. This is completely separate from that. I'd like to revisit that again with you in the near future, not today. So.
Thank you, Charlie.
Any questions? That was a lot. It's been a while since I've really, and we have a lot going on. We really do. And there's much, much more that could have been on this list that we have going on. And, I credit our employees. It's been a really hard few years. When it doesn't rain, you get 0 breaks. I mean, you just move from one project to the next. Our supervisory staff is, I hear it every day. It's hard to keep work out in front of them. It's a constant job to get utility locations, which is a completely separate debacle. But to keep work out in front of them has just been an extreme challenge due to the weather and the efficiencies that we have right now.
Appreciate the update, Tyler. Appreciate what your staff and yourself do. I think that we as a board, hear you, and I think that we're going to have to look the budget ourselves. I think there's some things in the works. I know that I've been working with Lindsay some, and so hopefully,
Yeah, I started
future-
working on budget this week. There's
Okay.
a lot of assumptions in there at this time of year, but for revenues and that sort of thing. But I'd be happy to start having those conversations in October, November, because I said last year was my hardest budget that I had submitted. I think this one's going to be even harder.
Yeah, and I do have that on our radar to hopefully be able to start talking, getting that process, getting the elected department heads together, and we as a board, we can start discussing. I think maybe hopefully we can. At the end of the day, we only have so much money, and
Yep.
so we have to keep that in mind too. So, okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Alan.
Make a motion to close discussion.
Second,
McCombs,
aye.
Ramey,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye. On to item number 6, supervisor updates.
I have a HERDA meeting Thursday. Coming up.
Mr.
All
Remy?
right, well, we've got public health and mental health today, and going to give a couple of updates here on the VA and then EMS post, our discussion at the last meeting. I'm gonna pull the VA map up, Renee. This is just to give an update on where we're at right now. If you've driven by the VA, you see that, Knoxville has proceeded with, the development of the site that we have transferred to them. So that is in the possession of the city of Knoxville. It seems like it's going very well. I know that there have been several lots that have been started to be developed. On one that's been sold, the basement's been dug, et cetera. But it's nice to see the progress out there, especially on the park. The one issue that's come up over the last week and a half is the school and the potential relationship between the city and the school and a potential land swap involving for me, the old high school, but now the old junior high. Just want to make sure everybody understands that in the original Confluence plan, we did have a spot designated for a potential elementary school. Currently, that property is still controlled by the county. So we need to make sure that from a city and school perspective, if they do have a plan, they need to come to the board and present that plan. So I just want to make sure that we say that in a public meeting so everybody's aware of that section is still county controlled. So if there is a plan, if there is something that the city and the school district that they are working on and they're down the road, they need to come and present that plan and how it will impact future development of that site. EMS. I don't have any slides for that, do I? Okay. Just a quick update on my last update. First of all, I want to thank Steve for writing an article in the paper and following up on that. A couple points of clarification. We do have our next EMS meeting tomorrow. So I want to make sure everybody understands the structure of this group. I had Jared do some comprehensive research on this. So Jared, you could just remind everybody what this group is actually designated to do and what authorities under the statute they have.
We took a look at Iowa Code Chapter 422D, which is the chapter controlling how EMS is declared an essential service if the proper procedures are followed. But the clarification that I wanted to make sure that everybody understood was just that the provisions of 422D are only triggered once the board votes and to make the EMS an essential service. That is, all the committee requirements and things like that in 422D are not triggered until such time as that declaration happens. I know the board has created the committee that stands now, but it's not controlled by 422D until that declaration happens.
Very good. Thank you, Jared. So just for clarification in all the debate and the discussion around EMS and the media coverage to it, that until such time as the board does declare it an essential service, which has not been done yet, then the statute is triggered. But for right now, it is an exploratory committee. It operates under the structure as approved by the Board of Supervisors. And its stated purpose is to bring back a recommendation really twofold. Number one, why should EMS be declared an essential service? And then if a request for a levy is made by that group in conjunction with that, what's the justification for that levy request? So hopefully tomorrow we will get to a place within this group where they can do that. That's my update.
Thank you. My update would be, I would like to speak a little bit about the Memorial Hall. I know the board in the past with the Legion has approved to put a new roof on it. I believe it is almost complete, but I'm going to ask Chris to come forward and give us an update on that, please.
Yeah, so Memorial Hall, the roof is complete. We're literally waiting for 4 pieces of metal that were not in stock for the south side. Once that's done, the building's done.
No, I appreciate that. And so thank you for you and your staff to overseeing that project. So thank you, Chris. Other than that, I have nothing further, so entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
McCombs,
aye.
Ramey,
Aye.
Johnner.
Aye.